Greetings. Today we cover two items. The first is Tesla's earnings announcement for Q4 2018. And the second thing we cover is kind of an update on the red semi-truck. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. If you're repeat, welcome back. For those of you please note that we appreciate the support of our Patreon and subscribers, and we do have 3 ads. We appreciate just 10 seconds of watching to assist the channel in maintaining its existence and growth. So Tesla just came out with earnings, and there are some secrets and some surprises. And so we wanted to kind of review first sort of a sketch of the basics combined with a look more in depth at our interpretation of what's going on with the company based on what's been reported. So the biggest thing that popped up today is that the most huge thing is the fact that Tesla had $7 billion in sales on a doubling of revenue, and that $7.2 billion in sales was $150 million in revenue ahead of what was expected by analysts. The other note was that earnings came in light, below expectation, and so that was also noted. And the third thing that occurred is that there was an announcement at the end of the show that the CFO would be leaving, another in a string of senior executives that are out, but an important one because the CFO really guides how the balance sheet is going to work. And so having that person gone is a significant issue and actually caused a $15 drop in the stock price, especially I think given the fact that the replacement CFO is 35 years old and has only been out of Harvard Business School for 4 years. So there's the level of confidence shown there in the replacement CFO, I think, was significant. There are maybe 4 or 5 basic points that come up from the numbers that occurred. I thought the most important point that came forward was that Tesla now has $3.7 billion in cash on the balance sheet, as well as the announcement that the $9 billion due on March 1st is well in hand and is not an issue. The next item that pops up, and so this is good news because this means Tesla doesn't have to look at bankruptcy and issues in that regard, and when the stock price drops into the 250s, part of that conversation is the fact that there's fear that Tesla may go the bankruptcy route and how that might impact all of what Tesla is doing. The next thing that comes up is the fact that there's a general sense that while the numbers were good, there's a huge number of unknowns. So we can go through a couple more of the givens and then jump into some of the analysis of what we think of what occurred and what the implications are. The next item is the fact that there's a discussion of the introduction of the pickup truck prototype over the summer that we're heading into. This is nice, but it was strange to bring it up now because it's not here and it wasn't impacted by current earnings, etc. So we found that to be strange as an item to be put forward. Number 4, there really wasn't any update on the time frame for the beginning of the production of the semi, and so that felt kind of strange because there's a lot of deposits and it's a very important product that's coming forward. The next item that sort of is in the mystery department is Elon announced that their goal is to get to 7,000 units of production a week in terms of cars produced. And this was very strange because if you go back through the numbers that were presented as of January 1st, the push number of production, there seemed to be times when 7,000 a week was being achieved in terms of production. So, you know, if you do the division by the number of Model 3s produced, it suggests you're around 5,500 vehicles a week being produced at by Tesla and the Model 3s. And so it's one of the mysteries that popped up, or surprises, was Tesla is talking about trying to get to 10,000 or for sure getting to 7,000 a week production, which analyzes it to 300,000 to 400,000 vehicles a year, and that the reach goal was to reach a 10,000 per week production run in terms of Model 3 production. And so this sort of begins sort of the mystery train of what exactly happened during the earnings call, because there's a number of discussions that have come out with Panasonic sort of hiding what the real number is. But it smells like Elon has sort of changed his process of how to give news on Tesla, which is something called UPOD, which is under promise and over deliver. The reason we say that is that if you're currently near 7,000 a week of production, and you've just you're increasing your battery production with the help of Panasonic, and you're increasing the pack production capabilities in ways that you've been describing, the fact that you're going to get to 7,000 by the end of this year suggests that, you know, that goal isn't a big stretch or reach. And you know, a bigger sort of interesting would have been for Tesla to announce, you know, we'll achieve 10,000 units of production a week by a certain date. So it kind of feels to me like Elon is being a little bit restrained in terms of what he's presenting. And I don't necessarily think this is bad, but it's strange to see the company change into a new gear once it's come through a period of announcing really big numbers and then missing those numbers. So I guess it's a hats off to Tesla and Elon for making this change in how numbers are presented, but I have to say it definitely feels kind of strange coming forward. The biggest thing that most folks are sort of surprised by is a $340 million CapEx number. So the big other discussion that's going on is the fact that Tesla has announced that it's not going to be raising cash, and it has enough capital to fund the investments necessary for the company to move forward using current earnings to drive the growth of the company. So one of the big narratives about whether Tesla would go under by the hedge funds has been that Tesla was going to need to do a capital raise in order to stay in business. And the fact that they haven't had to do that means that the company is in much better shape than expected in theory. The final sort of part of the earnings that we wanted to cover is that there seems to be a huge mystery about the fact that there's a concept in business called creative accounting. And what that means is that when you're a huge company with a lot of money moving on the balance sheet, there are all kinds of ways in which one can sort of present the information within the rules of accounting, but there's a lot of creativity room there for what the real truth is versus what's being presented. And so there's a suggestion that, you know, yes, Tesla is presenting the numbers. Those numbers are real and exist, and they're implied by the number of vehicles sold and the average price of those vehicles. But there seems to be a mystery as to sort of what's really going on, you know, versus what's being presented. And, you know, there aren't any sort of solid answers to that right now, and we'll find out as, you know, we watch production going forward. For me, I'd say the biggest surprise is the fact that, you know, right now Tesla has some severe sort of great operations challenges that are lurking that I think require capital. Number one, what are you going to do about parts for vehicles that are damaged in some way? And the parts that are being presented represent a lot of vehicles that haven't been serviced properly. So if those parts are part of the normal allocation that the company makes for warranty repairs, this could end up being a very big number of vehicles that are sort of damaged, needs repair. And until those vehicles are fixed, I guess it's not a big deal. The numbers aren't being felt because you don't have to sort of push it through. The other mystery that comes to mind for me is that if 3,000 vehicles a week are going to Europe, which is a good number, call it 12,000 vehicles a month, and let's argue that China gets about 1,000 vehicles a week, that equals about 4,000. So that leaves about 2,000 vehicles for North America to get. And that number seems kind of low given the population of the U.S., but at least in the short term it's not out of line because the U.S. is the only place the Model 3 was sold, and one could see the possibility of the numbers being pushed hard, and therefore you're sucking up a lot of demand that was there. So I think the U.S. basically could do without Model 3 inventory in large amounts for quite a while, given the number of cars that have already been sold and the fact that consumers need to cycle into the vehicles as there's a sense that it's a good vehicle that most folks are happy with that they've purchased. So overall, we have to say that some really good news. Tesla won't be going bankrupt. They've got enough cash to keep going and not raise any more. There have been some questions about what's going on in China and whether or not it's realistic for Tesla to deliver there. I would say that everything is fine in China because the Chinese have a way of making sure they can achieve what they want by flexing rules to sort of get certain outcomes. And in this case, getting Tesla to arrive and build in country has been the goal, and China's got the capital to make it happen, happily. The one other thing that I decided to add on to this is a discussion of the red truck. The red semi is an interesting vehicle because, as we know, the primary prototypes that have been making runs have been black and silver. The silver one being a 300-mile range, and we're assuming that the black semi is a 150 to 200-mile range vehicle, but in theory it could even be a second 300-mile vehicle, as we determined. The reason why we have not deemed it to be such is that it hasn't been making long-distance runs and doesn't have the aerodynamic properties of the silver vehicle that would designate it for long runs in the manner that silver vehicle has been doing. So the issue that popped up is, why are we running around with a red truck that's been created into red by wrapping it in plastic? And we believe the answer to that is that temperature profile. It turns out that a black vehicle is 20 degrees hotter than a white vehicle. So as a result, there's a good reason for people to want to collect data with the truck being wrapped in different colors. So I think the next natural wraps color would likely be white, so that one could collect data. I didn't think it would be that huge a deal to make the color change, because one would think that every mile doesn't count, but in this case, based on the change occurring, one could argue that making color changes to experiment with the data collected is significant, and cooling off the electronics in the vehicle by the temperature difference between black and red might be data useful to buyers in terms of, as they get their vehicles, how they're going to be equipped in every way, including the color choices made by buyers. So, interesting circumstance. Thought I'd add it on the end of the earnings announcement. Congratulations to Tesla on not having to go into the bankruptcy zone. You know, the other sort of final note might be, what are the implications for the stock given the news that's come out on Tesla? I think that the implications are actually good because there's a lot of demand, there's a lot of potential for good news that could positively move the stock. And for long-term investors, there's nothing hugely catastrophic that was presented that we've heard from Tesla. And so therefore, I think everyone can expect business as usual for now until we actually have some more real data to go on. So my expectation is the stock rises as we get a better feel for what the European and Chinese demand is for the Model 3. But there's no catastrophe on the rise. And I believe that the basic numbers on earnings that were presented based on revenue or sales that Tesla had experienced, you know, are in line with what people had expected, with the only surprise being what happened with the CFO. So, wanted to, in general, thank you all for taking time out to visit with us. Just a reminder, 20 leg lifts a day would be a good idea. If you can, a 3 times a week power walk would be helpful for the health plan. Don't go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4 hours. Let the food digest and no acid indigestion. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Please like, subscribe, and could use some help on Patreon if you would. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, lehitrot, Hebrew, Hoda Hafez. And in Jamaica, we say, Nuff respect, walk woodman. Look forward to any and all comments regarding our coverage of earnings. And I think in general, it's good news to not have a bankrupt company that you have to rely on to get your car from. Have a great day and bye for now.